Thank you very much for the welcome here, and hello to everybody. When I was, preparing, and many times I was thinking, when I think about the glory of God, and there's this song you all know, I'm sure, How Great Is Our God, and this is really when you think about the heavens, but also about, as you remember last time, life on a nano level, that everything is awesome. And I hope, and this is really my prayer, that God will be glorified by us sharing this afternoon. And I was tempted actually to show you the two real animations which didn't work last time, but I thought because of the time, and you have some idea of nano life or life on nano level and on macro level. So I will try to continue. There's so much I could share, but above everything, it is important that God will be glorified. I think we should turn off a little bit. Okay, so I have a manager at the back, I have to show him, so because we don't have remote control, so I hope it will synchronize. Okay, next one. You remember last time, we have the first four, life's biggest questions, and Bible has answers, micro and life or creation on micro and on macro level. Universe, I realize this is a bit much for a short time to squeeze in, but I challenged you. This is what's actually my intention, to start thinking about it, because there's so much we have lost and actually which we escaped our knowledge through the ages past. In the old days, where there was hardly any scripture, the people looked at the heavens, and they knew much more than we know today. But anyway, I want to continue with the next three parts, 5, 6, and 7. The two world wheels in conflict. And then let's look at some evidence. And again, I want to just remind you what I told you last time. I'm a scientist, and I never had any conflict between my faith in the Bible and the Bible as the absolute truth of God's and the revelation of God through the Holy Spirit of His thoughts about us, and there's no conflict between the Bible and science for me. And I couldn't find any conflict. So let's examine some evidence. And then also we will look at the young earth, the way in which the Bible literally explains it in Genesis 1 and also some other passages. And then the missing links, that means our so-called ancestors. Are they there? Are there any evidences about it? Next one. Okay, so let's move on. First of all, I just want to remind you, and this is just the kick-off, and this is important to keep this in your mind when we share, that you remember the way in which God created everything in the beginning. That was the best. I will come very much later to refer to this again when we look at genetic observations in our time and the fact that everything is not become better. It's not becoming better. It's downhill. So, but what God made, that was the perfect, absolute perfect, and in the beginning. So, and the next is David, and in many psalms he praises God because he realized how great God's creation is. And he said, I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. Even if you look around you in nature, something in you tells you there's something greater than just we as humans. And finally, I want to, again, remind you to keep this in your mind. The perfection of God's creation, the way in which God made it. And secondly, the complexity of life, as we sometimes call it, simultaneous complexity. And I will show you now how a cell inside functions. I don't have the animation now. As I said, that the time might be a factor. But what we call simultaneous complexity means everything needs in the right position and functional in order that even the simplest cell will function. But even the simplest cell, as I mentioned last time, is more complex than even an aeroplane. So, and we will look a bit more detailed into this. Next one. So let's start with the cell. And I think you remember that's where we also, what I mentioned last time. So this is how you start, your life started actually as a single cell after fertilization as a zygote, and then it started duplicating, growing. Okay? Yes? So, but now in your whole body, out of this cell, billions of cells came into existence by duplication, by growing. And this is one feature or one definition of life. A cell or something that can make a copy of itself, an exact copy, not with any failures or mistakes. That is, and so in your body we have more cells than in the Milky Way, more than stars in the Milky Way. The next, in the past second, our body has made millions of cells by division in two. So that means this principle of making a copy of itself, that is what God gave into life. Nobody can make it. And in spite of what you might hear about claims of the leading scientific groups, they cannot make it. They copy from nature. But even if you put it together chemically, you can analyze it, sequence it, synthetically put together, it won't live. Unless you use something that's living already and changing it by genetic modification, we can do that, but we need something from nature, from God's creation. And what is now, I want you to remember this once again. So we have total number of cells now, out of this one cell, became 10,000 billion. That is 10 to the power 13. I will also play a little bit around with numbers, because numbers are very exciting. But if we have to write the total number here in zeros behind this, it will be too much. So I think you all at mathematics in school, you remember the power to the power 10 to the power 2 is 100, and that means 10 times 10, and 10 to the power 3 is 1,000. So 10 to the power 13, we don't have to put in all the zeros. And what is maybe something a little bit shocking for you, you have 10 times more bacteria in your body than body cells. But don't be shocked, because they are essential for you. In the intestinal tract, I showed you last time, they even communicate with our brain. And they play a very special role also in our defense, in stimulating our immune system. So it's really wonderful how our body is totally composed in complexity, but to function in the way it functions in our environment. God created us in this environment, on this earth, because this is a unique environment. I don't know everything. I'm still learning, but I don't think there's anything like the earth in the whole universe. But this is my statement, personally. Anyway, let's move on. Now, I promised I will play a little bit around with numbers. You see, we have about 2 times 10 to the 6. That means about 2 million hairs. I think I've got 1 million, maybe. A little bit less than you, yeah. So you lose as you grow older, especially men, Okay, seconds in a year. If you count 1, 2, 3. After 1 year, you will only reach 3 times 10 to the 7. Can you imagine that? Only 30 million. Retirement age, in seconds, at 65, some people earlier, but that doesn't matter. 2 times 10 to the 9 means 2 billion. The world population at the moment is more than 7 billion. That means 10 to the 9. Miles or kilometers, miles in a light year is 6 times 10 to the 10. Now we come to numbers which we cannot really imagine. If you take all the sand grains on all shores, on all the beaches, it's 10 to the power 22. The number of stars observed, maybe only from our present knowledge, is at 10 to the 1022. Then we come to the candle power of the sun. That means 10 to the power 26 candles. Put together, they will maybe kind of a comparison with the light of the sun. Then, and then 27 and 26 is drops in all the oceans. Electrons in the whole universe. 10 to the power 18. 80. That's all. It's not much. It's a lot. Because I will show you bigger numbers. Be prepared. Okay? It said that any number, I'm not a mathematician or statistician, but they say anything larger than 10 to the power 30 cannot occur in nature. Now we are going to talk about randomness, something happening just by chance. If you just pick and so on. So the next one, what are the chances when you flip a penny that you will have the first time 1 head in a row? If you flip a penny, first time, okay? Next one, 1 in 2. 2 heads in a row, 1 in 4. 3 in a row, 1 in 8. 8 in a row, 1 in 256. And you can go on. And next one, 100 hits in a row. If you could manage that, you will win every lotto. But don't do it. How much would that be? 2 to the power 100 or 10 to the power 30. So that reaches the level or, the point where we can say it's impossible. I think you all agree with me. 10 to the power 30. That means 100 times every time in a row. Head. Okay, let's go on. Now let's look at something else. So the law of probability tells me, this is even very generous, 10 to the power 30. But now let's start in looking at life. We are composed of different cells, many different cells, 10 to the power 13, you remember? And each cell functions as in its own factory to make a copy of itself. And this factory must make all the components that must be put together and make a new cell. And among these components, there are proteins. You all know protein. If you eat meat or doenjang, it's protein food. Yeah? And some of the small proteins, and the building block of a protein is amino acid. Okay, I think you know that, or some of you, maybe from biology. And one small protein can contain 300 different amino acids, not different 300 amino acids, but in a specific sequence. Okay? Now, the chance that all these amino acids will be put in the right position, only in one protein, kind of a smaller protein, would be 10 to the power 191. You remember 10 to the power 13? That's beyond possibilities. 10 to the power 191 only for one protein. But there are about 3,000 or more in the simplest cell, like a bacterial cell. 3,000 different proteins. It's not only one protein. The cell needs many proteins, like enzymes and structural proteins. Okay. So to compose a single cell, but not only proteins, but maybe the cell membranes and the organelles for the eukaryotic cells, all these things put together. And you remember the flagella, which you saw last time, and the propeller, everything. So everything, and do I remember? Simultaneous complexity. Everything has to be there so that the cell will be functional. Otherwise, no function. 10 to the power 40,000. Only for one cell. Okay, next. Yeah, this you cannot really see this. I wanted to show you, just the basic principle. Take one amino acid, put them together in a chain, each one on the right position, and then you get, all the girls know, a string of beads together. So each amino acid is added, and then you have a long string of them. Next one. This is just the simplest way of showing a protein. Many amino acids, maybe 300 altogether. Each one amino acid must be in the right position. If one is on the wrong position, this protein won't be functional. And there's no chance for randomness here. It must be exact. Next one, this is not all. There your problem starts now to understand. Because a protein is not only a linear chain. We have a secondary, tertiary, and so on. You have a folded structure of a protein. How is this happening? It's completely beyond our mind to understand how this is regulated. This is just one example of a protein in myoglobin. The next one, even more complex, the enzyme, hence hexokinase. I'm not going even to, but just that you get an imagination or an idea how complex a protein is, or an enzyme. Kinase, hexokinase is an enzyme, and there are thousands of them in every cell, different ones. And each one has to be constructed according to the information in the chromosomes, or from the manager in the cell. I will show you how a cell functions like a factory. Next one. Okay, now what is very interesting, in the laboratory you can synthesize more than 2,000 types of amino acids. You remember what's an amino acid? It's a building block of a protein. Okay? But in nature, we only found about 20 amino acids. So from them, the whole selection must take place in the right sequence to make all these kind of proteins, and proteins are also, enzymes are also proteins. But what is interesting, in nature, well, first, if in the laboratory we can make amino acids synthetically, and then we will also, maybe, if you look at your hands are actually, one is a blueprint of the other, a copy. But they are similar but not same. You can see what I mean. Now we have in the nature, I'm not going into the structure of amino acids, but it gives you an idea. We have left-handed and right-handed amino acids. So if you make if you synthesize amino acids in the laboratory, they will always be 50-50 of each. 50D, 50L. Balance. In nature, we find only L amino acids. There's no chance for randomness. Because in nature, how did these L amino acids come into existence? There's only one explanation, our Creator. There's only very few exceptions. In bacterial cell walls, you may find D amino acids for some amino acids, only in the peptidoglycan structure. But I'm not going into more details. Practically in your body cells, in plant cells, L amino acids. No D. Okay, next one. So, and now I'm not going to read all this, but for each amino acid, there must be an instruction from the manager of the cell. And the manager, who is that? The chromosomes or the DNA. And the DNA contains the genetic language, which we call the genetic code. And 3 nucleotides will make one letter or one information step for each amino acid. So it will then show, if it once again take just a small protein with 300 amino acids, and then take 1,000 nucleotides from the DNA chain. And that means, they will encode exact position of each amino acid. Now, I'm not going into this, the details here, but here you can see there are 4 kinds of nucleotides, not more, but they compose the genetic alphabet. Okay? And so if you take this in a DNA chain, one consisting of 1,000 links could exist in 4 times 10 to the power 1,000 different forms. Again, it's a bit statistics and it's not my field or mathematics. But you see the improbability of just by chance every one of these 3 amino acids to be picked and put in the right position until the 300. If one is on the wrong position, the protein will not function. Nothing. It won't function. Next one. Now, again, I don't want to be too technical, but this is the protein factory of the cell. Very much enlarged. We call it the ribosome. And this is actually the messenger. It's called the messenger RNA. This messenger is coming actually from the chromosome, from the nucleus of the cell. And from that manager, it brings the instruction to the factory. And the instruction is so precise. You can see these triplets, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Each nucleotide will encode for 1 amino acid. And this will be picked and then will be put together like a string of beans, string of beads. But you can see here, growing string. So this will become a protein eventually. But what makes it more complicated is also that the mRNA will be translated back into the original language we call it translation, the tRNA. Bring it back into the sequence because it gets a copy from the DNA in the nucleus, and from that DNA, the RNA will be just a blueprint. Bring it here, give the instruction, and the translation will take place, and the picking of each amino acid will be according to what was originally given on the DNA in the nucleus of the cell. Precise instruction. Next one. And just to give you some idea of size, the bacteria cell is much smaller. It's about 1 micrometer, 1,000 times smaller than a millimeter. You can see all these different organelles in a cell. And what is so fantastic is, if you look at the nucleus here, that is where the manager of the cell is. And the manager contains all this information by which the cell can make a copy of itself within half an hour or 45 minutes under optimal conditions. And the point is, it's very highly regulated. It's not just randomly, because the instructions go to the protein factory. In this case, it's in the eukaryotic cell, is an endoplasmatic reticulum with the ribosomes. Remember protein factory? It will make it, but not fully complete the synthesis. Then it will move with a vesicle, or a vehicle we would normally say, from here to the Golgi apparatus, which has a receiving center and a shipment center, where it's be refined, the new molecule which the cell will use, and then at the same time it will get some signals or instructions from proteins which kind of next step should be made. At the same time, the cell needs energy. The power station, this is the mitochondria. and it will convert maybe the sugars. You know, we eat starch, and the starch is digested, and we get glucose transported to the cell, and the cell will use, actually it comes from the sunlight, converted into energy. And so this is the driving force that the cell can do the work to make new components. And but this is, I mean, it's too much detail, but just to give you some idea of the highly precisely organization in a cell. Next one. So this is a simplification of what's really going on in the cell, but just to give you an idea. So this is the power station. There must be some driving force, the energy. And this is the protein factory, maybe the endoplasmatic reticulum and the ribosomes. Then you have some packaging and distribution and so on. And you see here it's also making sugars and different other components. But this is oversimplification because it's so complex with all these regulatory mechanisms in the cell. The next one. And this is just to remind you once again about the complexity of the cells. This is the manager, the center here, and the nucleus. It will give the information, instructions by the messenger, sending it to the factories here. The factories will make the unrefined product. This will move to the Golgi apparatus, which will receive and then have a shipment center, and then it will be directed throughout the cell to where it's necessary, and that cell will start making a copy of itself. This is not random, highly regulated. And you remember now, one protein, how complex a protein is, because each amino acid must be put on the right position. And there are thousands of proteins in a cell. Not only proteins, many other things also. Phospholipids, anything that you can think of, you find it there. And they must be composed or synthesized all at the same time and synchronized so that finally the whole cell, that will be a duplicate or a copy of the former cell or the mother cell, will be exactly the same. And that also includes maybe a copy of the nucleus of the DNA. Okay, so as I mentioned last time, billions of non-living parts in the cell. Even a Boeing is not as complex as a cell if you go into all these details and the synchronization and all this information that has to be regulated. Next one. Okay. Now let's go back, and this is just one example here of a model of the DNA double helix. I'm sure you have all heard about it, double helix. And the two people who really discovered this and first published was Watson and Crick, 1953 in Nature. And so they were really great scientists. They received they were Nobel laureates. But what they said is also interesting, Watson, evolution is accepted as such, not because we have observed this in any manner, nor because we could prove it correct in a logical sequence of evidences, but because it is the only alternative to the act of creation. So I asked the question, why don't we just agree on creation? It's so much easier. Supernatural intervention or supernatural plan, design, which explains life to us. No, the only alternative, and it's not acceptable. Crick said DNA could never have come into existence by chance. They both agree. But God is not part of the picture. For me, very sad. Next one. Darwin, you all know him. Well, he marveled also at the complexity of life. What did he say? To suppose that the eye, with all its inimitable contrivances, could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree. If you just think about your eyes, it's just part of your body. Maybe not even essential. Essential is your heart, your lungs, and your kidneys and liver. But even the eye, it's so sensitive and so fantastic. There are so many genes that only encode different steps in the synthesis of the eye. Next one. So, let's look at these two worldviews in conflict, evolution and the Bible. Evolution tells us everything is just random, just by chance. We are accidents out of a piece of plasma, and we just became bigger plasma. That's what they say. Everything exploded into existence. And so it's for me much simpler to know, well, God is supernatural. He's out of time and space. Yeah? And the beginning, there was information. And this is the real point. Nothing, no natural or materialistic explanation can be given for how an information came to existence. Where does information come? So one can also say in the same sense, in the beginning was the Word, or in the beginning was information from our supernatural God. Okay. And God created. Next one. Evolution tells life evolved just from nothing, or from a pool of chemicals, natural process. God created all, is what the Bible tells. Next one. Different life forms evolved from a common ancestor over millions of years. Well, God created everything after its own kind, and I will come to this also. Next one. So it's very much about what is the input and output. We have maybe the same hardware in our brains, if you are evolutionists or creationists, same hardware. But there's a different input. And so what we see, we observe maybe the same fossil, but the explanation is different. So for me, I trust for you too, based on what the Bible says, it's great evidence for our Creator and for creation. If you look at anything around us, evolution, great evidence for evolution. So it's just two different interpretations to bring it down to a very simple level. Next one. Let's listen to another another evolutionist stated. That's why I put a question here. Is it ideology or a religion? Richard Lewontin, very famous evolutionary biologist. He was interviewed in the New York Review. Next one. We position ourselves on the side of science in spite of its absurdity of some of its constructions of the mind. And may I just tell you here, this is a contradiction. Science is not based on constructions of the mind. Constructions of the mind is okay if you call it theory or hypothesis. This is not science. So already he contradicted himself, but maybe this is in brackets, my critique. Next one. This is based on the obligation towards materialism. Next one. We are therefore forced to limit ourselves to materialistic explanation. I mean, he's speaking for evolutionists, not for me. So he's not speaking for all scientists. Okay, next one. This materialism is absolute because we cannot allow a divine foot in the door. The same as you remember Watson said. Outside of every explanation, but no place for God in our explanation, in our thinking. So they deliberately decided God is outside of their picture or of explanation or of their worldview. Next one. Now let's just investigate a little bit, a few evidences, a few interesting things. Remember what stated in Genesis 1 verse 24. God said that the earth bring forth a living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast, each according to its kind. And it was so. Now let's check what nature tells us. First, this is the evolution model, which the Darwinian evolution or macroevolution, which tells us, everything just evolved in a primordial soup from a primordial primitive cell, piece of plasma, and then it evolved to always higher levels of complexity. And, it looks impressive, this kind of tree, but they just draw it, They link things together which have never been linked together by science. So these, junctions and so on, there's no proof for that. It's just imagination, So, and this is what they call the Precambrian. That is where maybe the lowest layers in the geological column. Okay, next. This is what the Bible tells us. There was what they call, to the shocking discovery of the evolutionists, there was in the geological column what they call the Cambrian explosion. That means it doesn't fit their model because all of a sudden in the lowest layers, what we might consider as the oldest, all complex forms of life just were there all of a sudden. But let's just look a bit further and look at the tree of life. This is the tree of life that is exactly matching what the Bible tells us, because we have our basic types, and out of each type we get diversity. We all look different, but we're still humans. And the apes, they look different, but they are apes. Or the dog types, and so on. So this is based just on and all of them were there right in the beginning. There were no differences in time in the geological column when we found these fossils. Next one. And this is another way of explaining them. You see many question marks here. Evolution model. Everything just evolved just by random, and they call this evolutionary jumps, or many other names, But there's no proof for this. There's no link in the geological or in the fossil record to what we call transitional or intermediate fossil types. Nothing. Zero. This is the biblical model. We have question marks because we were not there in the beginning when God created every kind according to its own type. But we know the dog types, we know the cats and so on. They are all basically different. Okay, so humans, apes, the peacock here and the duck, they are different. Duck and peacock, you cannot crossbreed. So genetically, there's a barrier. The next one. You know what Darwin did? This is what he did, and this is very nice work. But he only studied the finches, and the finches, they remained finches. They didn't become anything else than finches. So he did nice work. But he only confirmed what we observe every day in nature, diversity. But he just thought, this is the explanation or this is the confirmation for evolution. Evolving from nothing to something, and humans, he wrote the book then, our ancestors, the evolution of species, and he connected humans with the apes. But no evidence. This was this evidence, part of it. So there was a mainland common ancestor of the finches which migrated to the Galapagos Islands. The Galapagos Islands had different climate conditions and also different feeding conditions, so they had to adapt to survive. And those that didn't adapt, they perished. But this is a basic law of nature we find every day. So what he actually showed is actually diversity adaptation and biodiversity among finch types here. No other type came out of this. So this is not evolution. Sometimes they call it microevolution, but it's confusing. It has nothing to do with evolution. Adaptation and selection. Next one. Yeah. Take the cabbage types, important for Korea for making kimchi. But you won't take the wild kimchi, wild cabbage. Next one. Come on, go on. Yeah, you have many different types of cabbage, And you have the China cabbage or Korean cabbage. And in Germany we use the white cabbage for making sauerkraut. It's our German kimchi. So, but you see, you have a diversity, but they all belong to one basic type. You can crossbreed still for agriculture among them. They are one basic type, or belong to a basic. Next one. The same year, if there's even a relationship between the horse and the zebra, the only thing is the zebraid is infertile. So even they, in terms of the development and dilution of their genetic pool, that they can still crossbreed, but the offspring will not be fertile. So going too far apart through the ages. Okay, next one. The peacock, the pheasant and the cock and the turkey, they are all related. You can crossbreed between them. But they are not related to the duck, so you cannot crossbreed with the duck. So again, there's a genetic barrier. No chance for evolution here. Evolution, if you would like, call it a microevolution, there's diversity. But basic on the original rich genetic pool that was in the ancestors, which we call the wild type. Next one. And we see the best in the dogs, because by breeding we get so many different types of dogs. But only through, not thousands of years, I think it was 500, 800 years, there's a very interesting history about this. And the wild type, that means the basic type according to which God created them, we assume it was the wolf. We were not there. But in terms of genetic richness, the genetic pool of the wolf is so rich, we can still crossbreed between the wolf and many dogs, or even the jackal. And I don't know if there's time, maybe I wanted to give a story, but there's many other things I want to share with you. I think we just move on. Okay, so now let's look at ourselves. And, if evolution is true, and if it's true what they tell us, we should become stronger and stronger by every generation. That is what they tell us. That means, and it shows here also. And what is a mutation? Mutation is like an accident. It's a genetic accident. It means like if you crash a car, you won't get a better car out of it. I think you agree with me. But they say a mutation makes something better. And again, there's a lot of debate around this, but there's basically no proof that mutation can make anything back. It will just go downwards. Okay? So, and this is the theory, natural selection should eliminate harmful disorders. Well, it didn't happen. But this is what, in terms of the theory, should happen. Less and less mutations, less disorders, we should become all more fit, less sickness, less suffering. Okay, what do we know? Or what do we measure? The next one. This is what we observe. Now remember, we must check everything on the basis of scientific facts. They call this Mendelian inheritance in man, or MIM. And maybe most of you might know Mendel. He was the father of genetics. Okay, and you can measure these, I would say, failures or mistakes or maybe mutations. Let's call it mutations, just summarizing. In every generation, and you can see they have been measuring since 1965, on and on. And they observe there's an increasing number, steadily increasing number of mutations in every generation. I cannot guarantee that, but the exactness, but I've heard that between every generation there's about 150 mutations. That means we are not becoming stronger. We have better medicine, we have better technology, we have better food today. So we become older, but a little bit artificial if we compare it with our forefathers 100 or 200 years ago. Okay. So, and then next one. There have been a huge project supported by the government of the United States, the National Institutes of Health. You can get some of this information there, and that is even online available. So the facts are there. You can even get it from internet. Mankind is not becoming stronger. Although evolution, they keep on telling us, we become better, and this is the whole point. They miss out on the scientific data, the facts. Next one. So, and again, the time is not enough to explain all these laws, but these natural laws have been given by God to keep the balance in nature and to arrange and to organize all kinds of activities, including the universe. But let's just take the laws of science. The first law of thermodynamics, what does it tell us? Energy is never lost, but it's just converted in another form, but only more unusable form. So you get equilibrium finally. The next one. Second law of thermodynamics is the law of entropy. That means there's a decay in the universe. I think if you see around you, if you leave anything for time, after 10 years, a building will just start perishing, or a car rusting, and so on. This is always the fact. And this is perfectly in line with the creation, but evolution tells me the opposite. Everything gets better. Entropy is the opposite. And this is a law of nature. Next one. Law of cause and effect. The cause of everything we see here was in God, the Creator. He was outside of time and space. And the law of biogenesis, that means it tells us life cannot come from non-life. Life can only come from former life. Biogenesis. Next one. Okay, so I think we have to move on here. The principle of causation, as I mentioned, because God has a particular plan and purpose for the universe and for each of you, for whom He created. So that is the law of cause and effect. And there's never any situation when you see some effect, there must be some reason for that. Whatever you observe. This is a law that is always applicable, always true. Next one. Okay, and it's also interesting now to check, is the Bible correct in accepting everything from Genesis to Revelations? And I stand on that point, yes. If we start questioning the Bible, you have to start questioning so many things, or you don't know actually where to draw the line and to say, okay, this part we will discard and the other part we accept. So the Bible tells me in the beginning, and when we go back, according to the historical record of the Bible, the creation was about 6,500 years ago. So let's check again a few facts. Next one. So, first, remember, time is the key issue. Not thousands of years, but billions of years. This is the key issue, the key factor for evolution. Next one. Okay. So, the biblical record tells me Yom is a literal day. Why does the Bible tell me The first day, the second day, every time it was evening, it was morning, the second day, and so on. It emphasizes the fact it's just a normal day. Even before the sun was there, God was the light. Day 1, day 2, day 3. The fourth day, the sun, the stars, and the moon have been created. But the earth was there from the beginning. Next one. So, and please go on, 6 days. And the family registers, we can go very, very exactly, we can go back in history. Next one. And, okay, God made everything beautiful in its time. Next one. We have to move on. Okay, now, which is the information which we can measure by scientific terms? Go on. If we take carbon-14 now, it will take time to explain the principle of isotope dating. But I can just tell you that anything older than 60,000 years there cannot be any carbon-14 anymore, because carbon-14 is the unstable isotope of nitrogen-14, and it will turn to nitrogen-14 again after what we call a half-life of 5,730 years. So today we can measure very exactly the ratio between the carbon-14 and carbon-12. And you know all life consists of carbon. CO2, which is converted by the plants into organic material, which we use as food, so the beginning of our food chain. You will find carbon-14 even in all life, but very, very low, small amounts. Now, the point is, remember now, you will not be able, by any measurable means, to find any carbon-14 in anything that is older than 60,000 years old. Maximum, maybe. What do they tell you? Coal, diamonds, how old are they? 200 million years? That's what I usually hear. Well, you can still find carbon-14 in all of them, indicating even the age of about 5,000 years for diamonds and coal. Next one. Helium, the fission, that's not diamond. We should be, the air should be filled with helium, because the decay of uranium to many steps to lead, there's always helium being produced, but it's still in the rocks, in zirconium crystals. It's not, it should diffuse outside, because it's very, the second lightest of all the elements. No, you should find it in the rocks. Next one, rocks, eruptions, Mount St. Helens. Dated 2.8 million years old, but it happened in 1980. So you see the deficiency in the dating methods. Next one. On. Okay, next one, nuclear decay. Okay, mistakes that the dating method used. Next one. You can see more eruptions in our time, where they dated it from hundreds of thousands of years onto millions, but it happened in our time of history. Several volcanic eruptions. Next one. So, evolution models of billions of years does not match the data. Rather, the creation model of a young Earth is in coordination or correlation with the data we can find scientifically. Next one. Here, for instance, human artifacts in a rock. There's a hammer in a rock, or here in brass, and other artifacts in coal. Remember how old coal is? And they tell us humans evolved from the apes 800,000 years ago. Well, they tell us coal is 200 million years old. So how did it come there? Human artifacts in coal. Next one. And Mount St. Helens. This had happened in our time. The Grand Canyon is just, a huge model or a huge scale of what we have a small scale model of at Mount St. Helens. And so the Grand Canyon is just I would say, the result of what happened during the separation from the dry land and the sea, when God said, let the waters separate after the flood and during the flood. So the waters had to move away. Next one. Okay, so this was Mount St. Helens before and after. Next one. We have to move a bit fast now. And you see, this happened in about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, stratification and another eruption. And then after that, there was then a dam burst and the water flew down and there was a canyon. You see the size of a man here. Next one. And then this is the Little Grand Canyon, but it was formed in our time. The same shape as the Grand Canyon. And so there's no reason that the Grand Canyon is millions of years old. It could have happened only in a short time. Next one. Polystrate fossils, the trees standing upright in different strata, which they say are millions of years apart. No, it could have only happened very fast. Next one. A fish swallowing another fish. They tell us, oh, it happened over millions of years. Well, a fish swallowing another fish, it won't wait millions of years to, and then become fossilized. This was a quick fossilization, quick preservation in seconds. And I assume also it took place during the flood. Next one. Okay. Now, according to the Bible, we can say more or less that Genesis flood occurred about 4,500 years ago. And everything was destroyed on earth, all land creatures and so on. So the oldest still living creatures could be, if they just started growing after the flood, could be around that age. So let's check. The oldest living tree which we know about is a California bristlecone tree, dated 4,300 to 4,000. They are the oldest on earth. Next one. This is how it looks like. Very, very old. But not older than when the flood it was, according to our calculations and what the Bible tells. Next one. Okay, the Great Barrier Reef in Australia also, about 4,000. Next one. Earth's magnetic field. They measured it since 1835. The half-life is about 1,400 years. So if we calculate back in history, that means it's becoming weaker every year. If we go back in history, it should have been so strong only 10,000 years ago that the metallic core of the Earth would have separated from its mantle. So the Earth cannot, according to our magnetic field, could that be older than 10,000 years? No, millions of years. Next one. Okay. And the sun is losing mass and diameter. The moon accelerates in its orbit. It spirals away. You can measure it 4 centimeters per year. That's not much. But if you add billions of years, the moon would have touched the Earth 1.4 billion years ago. So no chance of these old ages. Next one. Now I want to just go through the final part, and I hope you have, Pastor Greg, you have mercy on me. I have to round up. Some of the most famous scientists of our time, great Professor Ernst Mayr of Harvard, you all know Professor Richard Dawkins of Oxford. There's one statement, next one, which they said, proof that man and dinosaurs lived together would wipe out 100 years of evolutionary teaching. So the question is, can we show that, do we have any proof that man lived in the same time as dinosaurs? Now, according to the biblical record, everything was created in the first 6 days, including dinosaurs. The Bible doesn't tell deliberately anything, but they mention also dragons, and you find it also in the book of Job. So next one. Next. There was this is one of the famous excavation sites in the Paluxy River in Glen Rose in Texas. They found footprints of dinosaurs in the riverbed together with human footprints. Next one. And here you can also see something very interesting, the footprint of a giant. There were also giants, Genesis 6, you will also read about this, And so the dinosaur footprints, more, on. Pali. Okay. There's also dinosaur footprint here. Next one. Next. There are rock paintings with dinosaurs. They only called it a dinosaur since the middle of 19th century. Before that, nobody talked about dinosaurs. But there were dragons. I don't know how exactly the dragons look like. We have many paintings of that. There's another one, another rock painting. There are many artifacts in Mexico, man-made of dinosaurs, exactly as we know from pictures and paintings and artists' impression of dinosaurs. Next one. Next one, next. Yes, move on. Oh yes, and in that rock painting there was also a man, by the way, but I don't think a rock painting can be made by anybody else than a human. This is in a church in England, Carlisle, on a tomb of a bishop who died in 1496. Perfect engraving of a dinosaur. But they have a carpet covering this, so they don't want the people to see it because it just brings dispute for the church. But that's what they say. Next one. Okay. Now our real identity, I just want to summarize here. God said, let us, that is the Amplified version, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit make mankind in our image, after our likeness. That means our, not single, not me, but our. From the beginning, the Trinity was there. Okay, this is the point I wanted to make. And he repeatedly states in the Bible here, in verse 27, in his own image, in his image and likeness of God, he created male and female. So why does the Bible tell us, and other people, or evolutionists want to tell us we originate from the apes? Next one. Next one. Next. So, these are all the links they show here This is missing links. They are not there. Nothing to connect man with so-called ape ancestors. Let's just look at the final few evidences here. Next one. So, they just looking at, and therefore the question marks are here, but evolution wants us to believe we originate from the apes. Next one. So, the hoaxes about missing links, I just summarize a few and then I will come to a conclusion. Next. So the evidence, the missing links are still missing, and I want to show you. Some of you know about Lucy. That's most famous. Well, Lucy was just a chimpanzee. Remember, I just summarized here. Next one. What is interesting, this is the impression, this is the bones they found, but they made this out. You know, the artists, they have a fantastic time. You know, imagination, making something they just found a teeth or a bone, jawbone, and they make a whole picture with hairs, everything. That's really incredible. And what is important here, they just go back, because this is a real important point. This is in a museum in America, I think Washington. They made normal human food, but there were no bones in the food, but they made a human food. Now, next slide, will show you the footprint of a chimpanzee and human are totally different. And Lucy was just a chimpanzee, but with human feet now in the museum. So they want us to believe it. Next one. So, next one. This Professor Schumann, she said, they asked her, she said, they told her about the feet, which doesn't fit to Lucy. She admitted that the statue's feet probably are not accurate, but when she asked whether the statue should be changed, she said, absolutely not. So she knows it's wrong, no, but keep the feet, because it looks human. Next one. Java man, okay. There's too much, but they only, found these few things, and they made this out of it, even with hair, everything. That became Java man. Next one. So, he said, in my opinion, it was just a giant gibbon. He was the expert. It was a virtual. Next one. Pull down man, that is, I think, the classical case of fraud and lies. Parts have been found in a quarry in Pulldown, England. Portion of a human skull. Next. Only this part and the ape-like jaw. By the way, it was just put there. I will show you. Next one. They claimed it was a 500,000 year old intermediate link. The New York Times, they claimed Darwin theory proved true. So they said, okay, now we can prove life with God is outside of the picture. And it was featured in many textbooks and encyclopedias. And the next thing is more shocking. This is this part, and they made fantastic pictures out of it. The artists had a fantastic time. And the next thing, they wrote about 500 dissertations. PhDs and master dissertations just based on this and this. Imaginations. And finally, they found in 1953 in the British Museum, they could find the bones. It was forbidden for some time, up to 30. They studied, but they said the truth, the fraud, 600 years old bones. And the mixture of humans and ape. This is what they want us to believe. Okay, next one. Pull down man, this is Nebraska man. Look at the features, all details. Next one. Oh yes, and yeah, go on. They gave it a fantastic name to impress us. Next one. They call it Hesperonychus Harold Cooke. Harold Cook was the discoverer. Fantastic name. And it was called Nebraska man because this tooth was found there. Now, next one. That was a fossil, so-called fossil evidence was discovered in 22. Next one. It was this is some other stories to support the Scopes trial, which actually served to remove creation teaching out of schools. This was used as evidence. And they claimed that was 1 million year old intermediate link between ape and man. Okay, now what was the truth? It was only one tooth. That was the evidence of an extinct pig. That was all. And that's what they draw out of that. Fantastic imagination. But this is how they, confused the people, even the judge. He was confused because there was no evidence other than just the tooth. Okay, next one. Okay, on. Heidelberg man, only the jawbone here, they made this out of him. Next one. Ramapithecus. They found this and they draw this, but they found, it is just actually ape-like creature, you know. That was the fact, but they told us it's our ancestor. Next one. Okay, now I'm coming now to the conclusion. The history of efforts to link humans with ape-like ancestors is a documentation of fraud, lies, and distortion. Next one. So my question is, if science is based on facts, why do we need to corrupt science by lies and distortions just to make a theory fit? If the facts are there, let them speak for themselves. But why do we have to tell lies? So finally, who created? What was created? How was it created? When was it created? How long did it take? I think the Bible gives all these answers. And the next one. Finally, God, I thank you that you have made me so wonderful. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. That is my conclusion. Amen. Thank you.